My name is Baldric Sauza. I am a student from Bishop Ward and a member of the summer mentoring program of the Central Avenue Betterment Association. Today we have with us Miss Celisha Towers, who is running for Wyandotte County Sheriff. My first question is, what is your current former job?
My current former job, I was a full-time law student, going to law school, pursuing my law degree, which is really not a job, but, well, it is a job in law school. But prior to that, I was just working as an independent contractor, doing several different things with my businesses.
Okay, good. Why do you want to be the Wyandotte County Sheriff?
Well, I want to be the Wyandotte County Sheriff because I understand the resources that lack in Wyandotte County. I have over 14 years of experience of law enforcement experience. I grew up here in Wyandotte County, and I've also been in foster care in Wyandotte County. I've been a juvenile intake assessment center, a child in need of care. So I understand the resources that are needed in our community. At the same time, I understand that there is a school to prison pipeline. And when you have that school to prison pipeline, the sheriff is the one who mans that jail. So you want to get a hold of that jail, and you want to provide those resources that are needed to get a hold of those juveniles and provide those resources. It has not been provided. So I understand as actually being in the foster care, working in law enforcement and being on both ends, the resources that lack in these communities, and that it needs to be provided, and not just for show when it's political season. We actually have to have an inclusiveness for all communities, and not just when it's a political season.
What experience do you have to offer the position of sheriff?
Okay, great question. I have 14 years of experience across 3 different states. We'll speak on my education first. I have associates in pre-law. I also have a bachelor's in criminal justice. I have a master's in legal studies with my paralegal certificate. And right now, currently, I have 42 hours of law school experience. So with that being said, I've worked at the Cumberland County Sheriff Office, and that's in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I've also worked as case management correctional officer. I worked in Atlanta, Georgia, for the Fulton County Corrections. I've also worked at Jackson County. I've also worked at right here in Wyandotte County as a sheriff emergency response team. So I've worked in every single department. I've also worked the Road Patrol, every single department in Wyandotte County I've also worked. So it's very important that you have somebody who knows the inner rims and the workings of each department, and not just have titles. It's very important that we pay attention to someone who is going to provide the services for those deputies who are underpaid and overworked. It's very important that we provide the services for and the programs for all communities, far as with my experience, say for instance, you need ICE to be gone. You need somebody who's going to be a sheriff who's not going to cooperate with ICE. You get what I'm saying? So with my experience, I've worked with a department that hasn't cooperated, and I've worked with this department who has cooperated. So that's experience that I have, that it works better when you have that experience where you know exactly what the policies and the procedures are, and we just don't have titles. So I have over 14 years of experience. I'm working on my 4th degree, and I'm just passionate about the change that is needed here in Wyandotte County.
Good to know. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe that working as a deputy prepared you for sheriff, and why so?
Absolutely. Working as a deputy, and not only here in Wyandotte County, I've also worked as a deputy in Cumberland County. It prepared me because the deputy is the heartbeat of what happens at sheriff offices. You need to know how that jail works. You need to know what's going on in patrol. You need to know and have relationships with that community, not just when you're on shift. You need to have that personal relationship with that community when you're off the clock, if that makes sense. So the deputy is very, very important that you have that experience as a deputy working in the booker room. You have that experience of working a pod. You have that experience of maintaining all the areas in the jail, and you're not just at the top calling down orders. You get what I'm saying? So as a deputy, that's where the most training and skills, social service, everything comes from, because you're interacting with people that are at the lowest, if that makes sense. So being a deputy, it has also humbled me because I've had family members in there. Being a deputy in my hometown, I believe has equipped me for the necessities of growing up in the Northeast and then also patrolling in that area. So the deputy, that's the main person that is going to deal with everybody who comes within that jail in the facility, because the jail is literally, the sheriff office is literally about 75% of the jail. If you have not ever been in that jail, you don't know what happens or what takes place in that jail. And I can say that it's a couple of us. We know the inner workings of the jail, but it's others of us that we just have titles. We don't know what to do in that jail.
When it comes to connecting others, how do you build teams?
Say it again.
When it comes to connecting with others, how do you build teams? When it comes to connecting to others, how do you build teams?
When it comes to others, how do you comes to building teams?
Yeah.
That's simple. So basically, in order to build a team, you have to engage with those people. You have to understand how that person is, what they're about, and what the goal is for that team. So when it comes to connecting people, first you build that relationship. You have goals and plan. You have a mindset that you want to take place. So when it comes to building that team and then you're connecting with others, you're basically, how could I put it? You have a general goal, and you're basically, what your interest is within that general goal, you connect and you put those goals forth with whatever, say for instance, our goal is to bridge the gap between the community and policing. You team up and you partner with certain people that have that interest to bridge that gap between that community, and you have those same goals that come together and you go for a certain goal. Say for instance, I want to incorporate a certain program within the community. You team up with those people, you partner with those people, and you connect with the interests and what lacks in that community to connect with those in that community. And that's how you go about creating teams. You have to be engaged, you have to know what the necessities, and you have to know what the wants is in order to even connect and be with those people, create those teams.
Okay, good. And do you believe that you will still be able to connect with others if you were elected sheriff?
Absolutely, that's what I'm all about. Nothing has changed about me when it comes to the position that I serve in. If anything, I'm more engaged because I'm very empathetic about the position. It's very personal to me because I really want to see the change with everyone. So I'm more talking and engaged with my community and finding out, okay, what could you do better? What could I do better as an officer? So me being elected in a position, if anything, it would create more resources for my community that we already lack. It wouldn't change me as a person because I've always been a social person and always been the type of person that ask questions. Me as an officer, do you see anything change? I want that critical construction, criticism as an officer in general, because if you don't stay connected with your community, if you don't listen to the people who are on the outside looking in, you will start to change. You will start to carry yourself in a manner where you don't know that you're even changing when you're in that position. So it is very important to me that I always remain in my community, and I always kept in my mindset that me as an African American, I'm always one bad decision away from being in the cell that I'm monitoring right now, or being in the backseat of the car that I'm driving, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. How did being in foster care influence your physical and mental health?
I would say Being in law enforcement and then also having that foster care background with my mental health, I do go to therapy because it's very important that you heal that inner child. When you're dealing with people in law enforcement, you have the juveniles that you have to deal with. You have that child in need of care that you have to deal with. So it's very important that you deal with the therapy that you need to take and address those issues as an inner child. Because if you haven't healed as an inner child and you're dealing with those individuals that's the child in need of care and stuff like that, it's sometimes something could trigger you, far as you'll get emotional or something like that. So I do go to therapy, and I encourage, that's actually my favorite self-care appointment. I encourage a lot of people, if you've been in foster care or you dealt with protective services, to get that therapy. That's very important to me, and I think it needs to be incorporated into a lot of law enforcement. A lot of people don't take therapy serious, and I actually love going. I have a great relationship with my therapist, so I love going. So I do go to therapy with dealing with foster care and stuff.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
What are some challenges you have faced in the past, and how have you dealt with them?
Oh, that's a good question. So challenges, I'll bring an example of when I first became an officer. One of those challenges was the justice system. I couldn't understand being fresh out of college and being a new officer, and I'm in North Carolina, I'm thousands of miles away from home. I couldn't understand being in a courtroom why people were dealing with a public defender who maybe had 100 and something cases, and they just probably that day they just met that attorney. And I couldn't understand why it was just basically sweep them, out the way. So it would be people who couldn't afford, they would be indigent, couldn't afford representation. And I couldn't understand why their cases wasn't taken serious, why they were just basically a number in the courtroom, and why they wasn't getting the justice that they needed. It was just basically the bare minimum or doing just enough to get them out the courtroom. So that was a heavy challenge for me as a young officer. The other challenge with me as a young officer is when I was a young officer, when I started my career in North Carolina, I couldn't understand why certain offenses took less sentences that were more serious than more, like, say for instance, nonviolent crimes, far as they'll get 20 years, but then you have this person over here who they'll mess with children or something like that, and they'll get probation. I couldn't understand that. That was a problem for me early on. And then when I started reading, the legislature and the things that are going on in the inner workings of how things work, it started to make sense. People create rules and create laws. Rules are created to benefit those who, a lot of times, if they're accused of those laws work for the better for them. You get what I'm saying? So that was a problem for me as a young officer, of how laws were created, how people were treated, how justice was not served to a lot of indigent communities, the underserved. Now, I talk a lot, so you got to cut me off when I'm talking too much. Okay.
It's good to talk a lot.
Yeah.
Were you happy with the results of your trial in 2018?
Absolutely. So let's speak about it. I brought a lawsuit against the Wyandotte County Sheriff's Office for discrimination. So I was on actually a 12-month leave to go to law school in Arizona. And within that 12-month leave of actually returning, I had 1 year to come back. So within that 6 months, we had a major, and God rest her soul, we had a captain that got killed. And I was on Sheriff Emergency Response Team. So I had my commanders calling me, well, you need to get back here. We got a lot of stuff going on. We're short of help. And I'm like, I have summer school. So my summer school ended up being online. And I basically returned back to the county. And when you're going through that process and you're returning back to the county, you have to, the residency comes into play. But I'm still on 12-month leave. So I'm knowing that I'm on 12-month leave, and I'm telling them, okay, guys, I still got 6 months left. I'm coming back to help out. Here I'll clock in, I'll help out, but I still got to go back to school. End up coming back, and I was handed basically a termination letter for staying out of the county, which I was approved to stay at. You get what I'm saying? So I end up bringing a federal lawsuit against the Wyandotte County Sheriff Office. Well, you'll say the unified government of Wyandotte County, and then the Fraternal Order of Police for failing to represent me. So with all that being said and summing it up, that termination was removed. I couldn't find representation in this entire county. Lawyers were sold up when nobody take the case, so I represented myself having that law school experience, and I got the termination removed. With that termination removed, it came with a letter of recommendation and some other things from ASH, so I resigned from my position versus coming back. So I was if you think about 2 years of fighting with the government with no lawyer, me getting memo after memo after memo, standing just to get that termination removed, I was very happy with that results because I don't have that on my record anymore. So I was very excited when I got that removed, and I resigned from my position. And instead of going to accepting several positions that I was offered, I decided to focus on my education, finish up my master's, and then focus on my law school.
Good.
I love the questions that y'all ask me because they be they be questioning me. You hear me?
Thank you.
Let's keep them coming.
Thank you. How did being a victim of discrimination feel?
Well, it was no different. I think as an African American, and being in law enforcement, you deal with different versions of discrimination. Also, being a female in a dominated male field, you deal with certain conversations that happen. You deal with people being promoted over you, even though you're the most educated in the department. You'll deal with a lot of things as a woman, and then being African American in law enforcement. So it was no different. It's just the amount of fight that you have in you with dealing with discrimination. Are you going to fold when they discriminate against you, or are you going to mold yourself and deal with the discrimination that's thrown against you? So it's a life experience that happens nonstop. It's just how you deal with it. So it pretty much, I've been equipped my whole life to deal with discrimination. Being raised by my father after foster care, he pretty much trained me and dealt with me with dealing with discrimination. And that's how a lot of African American homes are dealt with. How we're raised to deal with discrimination.
It's good to know. It's pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So where did you go to college?
Okay, I started off college in Highland Community College. That's Highland, Kansas. Is maybe, if you heard of St. Joseph, Missouri, it's maybe 45 minutes away from there by Wyandotte, Kansas. Maybe a stoplight. We didn't even have a McDonald's there. So that's where I started off at. My second college, I ended up transferring to Fayetteville, North Carolina at Fayetteville State University, which is a historically black college. It's in a military town. And then I did Webster University, which was an online. Then it's also a campus in St. Louis, so I would travel sometimes back and forth if I wanted to go to that class. But that's where I got my master's degree from. Also went to Phoenix School of Law, which I think they renamed it Arizona Summit, in between some of the things that they were dealing with legally. But those are the schools that I went to.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So do you wish you studied something different?
I have so many things that I want to do. A lot of times I wish that I got into real estate earlier. Engineering, it's a lot of things. I'm interested in the house flipping now. I'm interested in just the whole real estate arena. So sometimes I wish when I knew more about that earlier. And then the engineering part, that's just a hobby, a part of just putting stuff together and taking things apart, where I wish I would have known, was interested more earlier in it. But the real estate thing, I think that would have been something I would have got involved in earlier with added to my career. But no, my criminal justice and stuff like that, that has been something that I have in my life before I even could go to school. You know what I mean? So it's in me because that's what I've dealt with my whole life, the criminal justice system. So I would add real estate, but criminal justice, that's me. Learning the law, that's me.
Good. How would you describe your passion towards your career?
Oh man, sometimes I'll have to say before I even speak, and I'll get passionate. I'll be like, y'all have to excuse me because I get really passionate about it. So sometimes my voice will elevate, but I'm very passionate when it comes to my career because, like I say, it's a life experience that I've dealt with coming in and being an at-risk youth. But that is that is just something that I'm automatically passionate about because I understand the change. And for this position of running for sheriff, when you've literally been in it personally and you dealt with inmates and stuff like that, sometimes they're not going to listen to you if you haven't been through it. You get what I'm saying? When you talk to those those kids that are locked up, they don't care what you're talking about because you don't understand they struggle. So me understanding their struggle, me talking to foster kids and understanding their struggle, I know the necessities that they need to be successful out here, if that makes sense. You get what I'm saying? So when I speak to them, I understand from an empathetic position of where they're coming from. So I'm very, very passionate about it because I know what it takes to navigate in the worst parts of Wyandotte County and been successful at it. You get what I'm saying? So when we speak about passion, I will push it further and just say it's something personal where I want people who've been in foster care, or you have a parent that's a felon, or you done came over here and don't know where to go or how to navigate through this community. I want them to be successful. So it's very important and a passion for me.
Good. Are you financially stable?
Well, I drove here. I think I stay in a pretty nice place. I don't know. I stay across from the Legends. My rent's paid. Financially stable enough to be here today. You know what I mean? Yeah. So yeah, I'm financially stable. I joke a lot, but yeah, I'm financially stable. I can definitely be better. But yeah, I'm financially stable.
That's good. Good.
I can go different levels. I'm financially stable.
After all this analysis, truly, what do you have to offer to this position?
Oh man, I got life experience to offer. I have so much to offer to this position. So many programs, so many things to this county that can take place. Inclusiveness. It's so many things that can be done to push this county to a different level. And we have to understand that if we continue to do the same old thing and expecting different results, we're not going to get anywhere. So with the climate of the community of what's going on today, I have a lot to offer, cleaning up the departments from corruption. You get what I'm saying? I have a lot to offer when it comes to making sure that those deputies are not robbing Paul to pay Pete, that they're well paid and that they're recognized and promoted fairly. You get what I'm saying? There's a lot of things that I have to offer to this county where I'm including everybody and I'm recognizing the needs of the majority and not just the privileged few. So it's very important that we pay attention to this election. That we pay attention to the history, because we did just come out of a pandemic and the entire government was silent on that matter. So we have to pay attention, not what's just been put in the media now. We have to pay attention to the things that people really can offer to change this community and not what they're just putting in the media for a political season. You get what I'm saying? So there's so many things that I have to offer. I'm careful how I say it, what I say it, because if I say that a certain program that I want to offer, that program is going to be at Wyandotte County tomorrow because they're trying to get this office again. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I have so much to offer, but I will not say them verbally. They watching me.
So, like, have you ever committed a crime?
Yeah, I was an at-risk youth. I was an at-risk youth. 5 minutes. So I was an at-risk youth. So yeah, I've committed a crime as a juvenile. Now I'm a square. I'm a complete square now. I drink occasionally, but I don't smoke. I don't do any of that. But as a youth, absolutely.
Did you do that back then?
Huh?
Like as a youth?
What you mean?
Like smoke and all that?
The first time marijuana was offered to me was at 11 years old.
Oh.
Yeah, it was offered to me at 11 years old. Now, I wasn't a person that was out here and that was just smoking like a train or anything like that. But the first time it was approached to me was 11 years old. And you have to remember, if you know the history of me, I grew up with a parent that was a drug dealer. You get what I'm saying? So there's a lot that I've seen. That's a lot that I've dealt with. And not saying per se that I was doing things illegally, but it's a lot that came across my face. You get what I'm saying? So, and being an at-risk youth, I was running in crowds and things were happening around me. So I grew up in Northeast, right down the street, Quindaro.
Yeah.
I grew up down there. I grew up, I was in Call Valley. I would run away from home. That's illegal too. You ain't supposed to run away from home. I ran away from home. What else have I done? I was a trip as a child. But yeah, to answer that question, yeah, I've done some illegal stuff. But now I'm very a person that you should be held accountable for the things that you do. But at the same time, you have to put an educational piece and you have to put the resources that lack in that community so they won't go out here and commit crimes because they can't pay rent or can't put food on the table. So it's very important that we not just, it's law and order. No, it's not all about that. You have to provide resources because a lot of time in our communities that are underserved and they're not getting the resources, they'll go out here and they'll create crimes because they can't even pay rent. You know what I'm saying? So that's very important.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Ms. Towers, for sharing your information with us. We wish you the best luck and better future for Wyandotte County.
I appreciate it. You're doing awesome.
Thank you.